So welcome and thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. And I want to thank Pranjali and the Burrenbeo Trust for hosting this FMA event. Now, the FMA, or Field Monument Advisor Programme, has been running for over 15 years. And the aim of the programme is preservation through awareness. And this is achieved by giving farmers and landowners as much information as we have on the monuments on their land. It also includes local communities and anyone with an interest in a monument in their locality. So it's really an information and advice service. So for the past 10 years, most of the FMA time has been spent in the Burren with the farmers in the Burren Programme. And most of you will know that this is the Farming for Conservation project, which has been very successful in supporting farmers to farm sustainably and at the same time protect the flora and heritage of the Burren. The FMA programme has dovetailed perfectly with the Burren Programme in giving the farmers information on their archaeology and advising them how the work should be done under the Burren Programme, or how the work done under the Burren Programme can ensure the preservation of the archaeology and other sites of cultural and interest on their farms. Now, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that the Burren Programme, even though its prime objective is the protection of the natural heritage, is the best thing to have happened in the Burren for the preservation of archaeology. Now, normally for Heritage Week, we organise an outing for people to enjoy and learn about some aspect of the local archaeology. But this year, as with last year, we are confined to giving an online presentation. But the upside of this is that we get a chance to see some of the archaeology on a private farm in the Burren. As most of you know, most of the archaeology in the Burren is on private land and permission is needed to visit the sites. Now, John Hines, the farmer, has kindly allowed us to survey the sites on his land and photograph and record them. John has been a member of the Burren Programme for several years and has carried out significant amount of work to improve the grazing regime on his farm. But along with that, the work has greatly enhanced the preservation of the archaeology and other sites of cultural interest on his farm. And you can see the farm outlined there. It's just south of Newville, over in that part of the Burren. And you'll see the details in a pile of what he has on the farm. So this virtual tour of John's farm will show the previously recorded and some unrecorded sites and how his work has improved on the state of the monuments. So before the start of the tour, I just want to acknowledge the following. First of all, John Hines himself, obviously, the Heritage Council for supporting the FMA, and the Burren Programme, which also supports the FMA, and especially Donald Hogan, who took the aerial footage for the presentation tonight. The Burrenbeo Trust Volunteers for their work in clearing many of the monuments on John's farm. So I leave it there for the moment. I'll mute myself, but I'll be back later on for any questions that I might have to answer for you, or any discussion. So I'll hand over now to Elaine, who carried out most of the survey on this farm and is more familiar with the monuments here than anybody else, except for John Hines himself, who was very involved in the whole project. So thank you, and over to Elaine.
Thanks very much. So this farm that I'm going to show you today, I'm going to show you through photographs and actually some drone footage. So there'll be a couple of videos that will be played along the way. And just for anybody who does have any problems with this presentation is being recorded, so it will go up on YouTube afterwards. So the farm is located in the kind of south central area of the Burren, and it's between two townlands, the townland of Lismoher and Newville. And you can see from the red marks that are dotted across the map, there are a range of sites from the prehistoric period to the early medieval period, and actually up until more recent times, so early modern as well. And they kind of range from, he's got a couple of cairns, there's numerous prehistoric walls, a field system, enclosures, there's 4 cashels on the site, there's hut sites and structures and goat crows, and there's a ruined farmhouse. So I won't be able to show you all the monuments and all these sites today, so I'm just going to show you a range of ones that are on the farm. So we're just going to start at the kind of northwestern end of the farm, where this is as you'd enter into the farm, and what you'd first see is Lismoher Cashel and Lismoher House. So These are just as you enter into the farm. So I'm going to play a bit of a video here and a drone footage. So Lismoher House is an 18th century house. It's a 4-bay 2-story house, and it has associated outhouses and a coach house, and it has lovely entrance gates that are wrought iron. So you can see the proximity of the farmhouse here to the cashel. So the cashel, Lismoher cashel, is it's a single walled cashel, but in very good condition. And it has a southeastern entrance, which is flanked by a very large upright stone. So you can see it, and you can see the proximity of the cashel to the 18th century house show the continuity of occupation on the farm over many centuries. Now, so this is what the farm, if you were walking the farm today, and this is what the farmhouse, the Lismoher house looks like. So you can see the main house here in the top right-hand or top left-hand image. And you can see the outhouses and the lovely wrought iron gates and the old coach house. And this is what the cashel looks like. So it's a well-built walled cashel. And now I didn't find, when we were out surveying, I didn't find any evidence for structures on the inside, but it doesn't mean they're not there. And you can see the entrance here, which is on the southeast side. And you can see this lovely, very large stone, but I'd say this stone might have been the original lintel stone that would have been over the entrance of the cashel. So the next type of site I'm going to show you is the field system. Now, this is a very large recorded field system that is part of an extensively marked field system, which covers most of this farm and actually extends out to numerous surrounding townlands. So field systems are kind of a unique feature of the Burren, and they're the remains of ancient fields from the Neolithic through to the medieval period. And can be associated also, so they can be Neolithic, but a lot of them then also are Bronze Age. And basically a field system is just the fields of early farmers. So it's early evidence of farming on the site. So research by Dr. Carlton Jones, he did a lot of research on these mound walls, and he actually dated them to roughly around the early Bronze Age period, with some dating to the Neolithic. Now, his research also identified later walls and even modern walls, which actually had been built on top of mound walls. So you're looking at kind of the reuse of earlier walls and field systems into later periods. Now, there's also, so another type of feature of field systems are also slabs walls, and these are literally consist of upright stacked slabs forming walls, and these are the usually remains of the medieval and post-medieval walls. Now, mounds and slab walls are associated with early field systems and are visible throughout much of this farm. So I'm going to play you a video. You can see the field system is just here. This area of the farm, now actually, sorry to say, this area, this is just a very intense area of a field system here, and the farmer has actually recently cleared this area. Now, it was inundated with scrub, so he's actually cleared a lot of this scrub and has really brought up these walls. And kind of the best way to see these field systems is really through drone footage. So he's done a very nice job, because it's really brought out the range and the kind of mazes of walls that you see in this area. Now, the work itself did reveal numerous fields enclosed by curvilinear and straight walls, and these include mound and slab walls, with later walls have been built on top in some cases. And as you can see from the video, I don't know, I hope you can see there's a routeway, a northeast, southwest routeway running through the center of this area of the farm. And this is an old routeway, and we don't know how old it is, unfortunately, but it could be related to the medieval period or post-medieval period. Now, some of the mound walls in this part of the farm could also be Bronze Age in date and could have been continued in use through the medieval period up until maybe more recent modern times. One of the benefits of clearing an area like this from the inundating scrub will assist with preserving these field systems into the future. So, and they're also an excellent opportunity for the study of the development of field patterns and enclosures from the prehistoric period through to the medieval period and into more recent times. So you can see it looks amazing from the footage. Now, if we were walking this area on the farm, if you were actually walking it on the ground, it's very hard to see. So really the drone footage that we took of this it really shows up all these walls, and you could really map out the system from that drone footage, because this is what you're looking at on the ground, and you can see it's very hard to tell what you're really looking at, but this is actually the routeway that is running through that field system. Now, there is just to the northeast of that field system area, there is actually another cashel. So it's the second of 4 cashels on this farm, because I'm going to show you all the 4 cashels today. And this is, again, a well-built cashel, quite large actually, and a little bit bigger, actually bigger than Lismoher cashel. And this is what it would look like if we were out on the farm today walking it. Now, I'm just going to move us down to the southeast end of the farm, just down to the south, and you can see I'm going to show another cashel and an enclosure, or possibly a house site. All right. So here's the cashel. So this is a cashel. Again, it's slightly smaller than Lismoher cashel, but it's a single walled cashel. And again, quite a well-built walled cashel. Now that cashel was actually inundated with scrub, and under the Burren Programme scheme, the farmer did clear the scrub using hand tools, and he really brought back out the cashel, because it really wasn't very visible if you went to see it. So he did a lovely job of clearing it, and you can just see here where the video stopped, there's actually just not too far from that cashel is the small little enclosure and possibly a house site. And again, this was also totally inundated with scrub. I mean, again, you could barely see these, just the kind of tops of the stones. And one day, the Burrenbeo Trust Volunteers actually came out and cleared this cashel. So they came out for a day with their hand tools and removed all the scrub off of the enclosure. So here's the cashel as what it looks like today. Now, these photos don't do it justice actually, because it kind of was out in the middle of the summertime. So you can see the grass was growing. So they're actually just don't come up as well as the photos, and the aerial photography is the drone footage is really, really amazing at showing these up. But if you just look at the aerial map that I have at the top right hand corner, you can see the cashel was completely covered in scrub. So a lot of work went into clearing the cashel using the hand tools. So, and you can see that it will really help preserve these monuments into the future. And the farmer is looking after these monuments as well. And also the grazing regime on the farm will help to keep the scrub back off of these sites. So here's what the enclosure looks like as well today. So a lovely stone walled enclosure, well built. And again, you can see from the aerial map that this one was also quite covered in scrub. You can see just the inside of it from the aerial map here. But again, the walls were completely inundated. So again, you're just kind of bringing them back to life, bringing them back where you can come out now and see these type of enclosures, and we can measure them and record them as they are. Now, there's the fourth cashel, which is on this farm, which is not too far. It's just located just to the northwest of the cashel and enclosure I've just showed you. And again, it's of a similar site to Lismoher cashel. And actually, in fact, this one just has actually quite wider walls. So they're a bit over 2 meters wide. You can see that this is what the walls look like today. And you can see they're much wider. They're actually much wider, but again, the interior is still not as big. So it's similar size again to Lismoher cashel. And again, this is another cashel that the farmer cleared of scrub. And you can see, again, it was just totally inundated with scrub, and he cleared it using, again, hand tools. And of course, was very careful not to pull the material off, and just to remove it carefully, not to disturb any of the stones. Now, this one is located at the very edge of this kind of corner of this field. So there has been, if you just look at the bottom left-hand image, there is a later field wall has been built on top of the cashel wall around the south end of this cashel. So again, just kind of evidence of kind of consistent farming and, these kind of the reuse of walls on the farm. Now, so this just cashels in general, just for anybody who doesn't know, cashels or cahers are stone forts, and they're the equivalent of an earthen rat or a liss. So these are usually homesteads of a strong farmer or lord from dating to the early medieval period, so sometime around 500 to 1100 AD. Now they do vary in size, and approximately 20 to 50 meters in diameter. And in their simplest forms, they're defined by a single enclosing wall that can vary in width from 1.5 meters to 3 meters. So on this particular farm, we have 4 cashels. And as you can see, I've just outlined them there on the map, and they're all, looks like they're all in a straight line. And all of these cashels, as they stand today, only have a single wall. Now, it is possible that Lismoher Cashel may have had a secondary wall, but that is not there today. So, but it's a little bit hard to say. But at the moment, we have single-walled cashels on this farm. Now, the entrance to cashels are generally always found on the east or southeast side, and many cashels also have souterrains. So souterrains are underground passages that are usually formed by dry stone walls with lintels over the top, and sometimes they'd have a corbelled chamber. Now, storage and refuge seem to have been their main function. So because they were underground, they would have been cool and a cool place to store things like food as well. So during this farming economy in the Iron Age, cattle were really central to the farming. And during this period, cattle, during this period of cashels, cattle became the unit of currency. So a farmer's wealth and status could be judged by the number of cattle he possessed and the size of his ringfort and cashel. So cashels and ringforts with more than one enclosing wall or bank are usually the farmsteads of the local chief or king in the hierarchy of the Tua. So the Tua was what we call as the local kingdom, and it could cover a large area, roughly around the size of a modern barony today. So second and third walls also would have increased. So they would have functioned, so having additional walls would have functioned as defenses for the cashel, but were also an important symbol of status of the occupiers inside the cashels. So the farm is located within one of the most archaeological rich areas of the Burren. So there are many field systems and wedge tombs, cairns and enclosures, but most notably are actually the high number of stone ring forts or cashels and cahers in this area. And this indicates a very intense level of occupation and farming in the early medieval and early Christian period. So I've just shown you, I've just extended out the map of the farm, just very briefly, just gone out a small bit, just to show you the recorded cashels that are in this area. And as you can see, there's quite a few just outside his farm, just outside the farm. And some of them are actually named cashels. So just if you look to the north, there's Cahir Cotteen, Cahir Walsh, Cahir Naspiceen, and Cahir on Eden. So there's a range of cashels just outside the farm. So again, just showing the intense activity of the farming during the early medieval period. Now, the next slide I'm just going to bring you right up now into more modern times. It's actually an old 18th, kind of 19th century farmhouse cottage. And this is just located over to the east of the site. And as you can just see from the aerial before I show you the filming footage of it, it was actually also inundated with scrub. And the farmer again has actually cleared the scrub from the site. And you could just about, if you'd been out to see it before the scrub, you could just see the tops of one side of the wall of the house. So I'm going to bring you across here, and you can see the house is coming up just there on the left-hand side. So it's just a lovely kind of, again, just it is a more modern feature, you know, of 18th, 19th century, but just sometimes we can sometimes relate a little bit more to the more modern sites of an old little farmhouse or cottage. So this one is so So it has rounded sides. So it's a small rectangular, sub-rectangular house with rounded sides. So it indicates that it would have had possibly a hipped and thatched roof. And the entrance is situated on the south side. However, the entrance has collapsed. So we can just see a bit of the entrance there. Now, what's actually happened inside, so after the house went out of use, a lot of the stones had collapsed to the inside. And what we found on the inside is actually an old GoPro. And that's what you're looking at here with that lintel stone. So somebody has inserted, when the house was abandoned, an old GoPro. And just for anybody who isn't too sure, GoPros are just small pens where young goats were kept during the day while the mothers were out in the field. Now, and this is what the house looks like if we were walking on the ground today. So the entrance is just here, but it's collapsed, and you can see the GoPro on the inside. So it's a lovely feature of the more modern farming that gets left from the modern farming times. So if we just move over, just literally not too far from the house, is just over to the east, and we've actually moved into the townland of Newville. Here we have 2 cairns and 2 hut sites and a small stone hut. So I'm just going to talk about the 2 cairns and first, but I'm just going to show you the video which will show you all of them, and I'm going to stop the video so you can see the cairns from the drone footage, because they can be a little bit hard to spot. So I'm just going to stop the video there, and I hope you can see my arrow. But here is the first of the cairns, and here's the second one. So these are literally situated right beside each other. And in between, in this area here, are the 2 hut sites. Now, the 2 hut sites are very difficult to see. You can just about kind of see bare traces of a mound from the aerial photo. But if you were walking this in the ground, you really would just walk over them and wouldn't really even notice they're there. So they're just bare traces of the hut sites. But the drone footage kind of shows now, as you can see now, the cairns. They would be hard to spot if I didn't show you where they were. And here, just right in the center, is a small little stone hut, which I'm also going to show you in a few minutes. So this just shows you a great view of the farm and where the cairns are, and shows you these old field walls that are running through the farm. So just so here's one of the cairns. This one's just a southern cairn. And just for anyone who's uncertain what cairns are old burial monuments that can have their origins in the Neolithic period, but do seem to have been used during the Bronze Age and into the Iron Age. So they can vary in size from large hilltop enclosures to much smaller examples. The hilltop examples in the Burren, such as the one at Turlock Hill and Slieve na Carran, can be clearly seen from many miles away. So they have fantastic views, and you can see them from very far away. Now, there's also smaller cairns, although not necessarily situated on hilltops, are also generally in a dominant position in the local landscape, and were probably the burial places of the local clan and family chieftain, and also probably along with other members of their family. So that's kind of what we're looking at here on John's farm, is that they're not located in a high prominent position, but they are in a dominant position. And if you were out there today, you could see you have really 360-degree views from both these cairns, and you can see both the cairns from each other because they're very close to each other. So this is the cairn. It's obviously grass covered now, but would have consisted of a heap of stone. Which would probably have revetment stones around the base, and those large revetment stones, if you imagine like what Newgrange looks like with very large stones. Now, this wouldn't be anything to the size of Newgrange, but they would normally have revetment stones around the base to keep the cairn in place. So although there's no monument there's no diagnostic Neolithic monument on this farm to date. So we can't say there's definitely a Neolithic activity on John's farm, but we do know there is a Neolithic court tomb, which is literally 350 meters just southeast of the boundary of his farm. That shows that Stone Age settlers farmed this area at least 5,000 years ago. So we do know that they were in the vicinity and most likely farming this area and this farm. So Palnawak Cairn, which is really three kilometers to the north, and they found the remains of around 18 people. And the earliest burial from Palnawak actually dates to the Neolithic period, and there was later insertions of Bronze Age burials afterwards. So you're looking at a cairn that roughly had around 2,000 years of activity. Now there's a smaller cairn at Coolnatulla, which was partly excavated, and this one kind of dates to the transition from kind of at the end of the Neolithic to the Bronze Age period, so roughly around 2400 BC. And again, some of the burials date to the end of the early Bronze Age, so that was kind of like possibly a late Neolithic, early Bronze Age cairn. So even though so the two cairns on the farm, now they're not as large as the Palnawak one, but they are bigger than the Coolnatulla one. So it's not we could suggest that they may have had their origins in the Neolithic period, and also due to the proximity of the court tomb in the neighboring field would support this, that they could be Neolithic in date, but also with possibly Bronze Age activity. So it is possible that these could be Neolithic, but unless we actually got to excavate them, we couldn't say for sure. Now, so this is one of the first ones. So a lovely has a nice little peak on the top of it here. And again, these are kind of hard kind of monuments sometimes to see, to photograph as well. And here's the second cairn. Now, this one doesn't have that nice rounded peak on the top. Actually, this one has a concave in the top of it. So what actually looks like has happened with this cairn is that the chamber below, which would have been a dried stone wall chamber and possibly a corbelled roof, has actually collapsed. So the cairn itself now has collapsed into the top of it. So as to when this could happen, well, it might have just happened over time, or maybe there could have been human activity. It's a bit hard to say, but there was, unfortunately I don't have a photo, but there was revetment stones, the tops of these large kind of upright stones set on their sides that were actually around the base of this cairn, and there's about 4 of them in a row. Now unfortunately they were all covered in grass, but I could just see them there that would have again supported the loose stones and would have stopped the cairn from slipping during its time of use. Now, there is a third cairn on this site, which is actually further over to the east. So we have our 2 cairns at the eastern end and another cairn in the kind of southern end, they're over to the west, but down to the kind of southern part of this farm. Now, this cairn is much smaller, and again is actually not very visible, but again in a dominant, got fantastic views, or if you were standing where this cairn is, you can see fantastic views. So again, 360 views from this cairn. Now it's much smaller and definitely not as high as the other 2, maybe about 1 meter in height. But the interesting thing about this one is that it has the remains of a cyst in the top of it. And so you can just see from these photographs, the 2 right-hand photos, there is a single large stone set on its side, and this is obviously possibly the remains of a cyst. And so just in case, cysts are kind of rectangular structures, and they're usually constructed from stone slabs set on their edges, which are usually covered by 1 or more capstones. And these were structures that were used for burial purposes. And cysts are usually dated to the Bronze Age or Iron Age. So you could be looking at maybe an earlier cairn with a later insertion of a cyst in the top of it. So that's quite possible here. Now, so just to show you the 2 recorded hut sites that are between our 2 cairns. And again, you can see from the photographs, so here is one here, and then the second one is just situated here. And again, these are very difficult to photograph. They're just not very visible. very visible on the ground. You'd nearly walk over them and not even realize that they were there. Just hut sites, what you normally see are kind of these two are two circular earthen banks, and they usually functioned as possibly a house or a little hut site. So a dwelling, an area for dwelling, basically. And these probably date to sometime around the Bronze Age and are likely to be associated with the cairns. So again, unless we actually excavate them, we can't say for sure, but you can see the proximity of these two cairns to this cairn here. And there's just a wall, like probably in the time of their use, this wall wasn't there. So this wall has come in later. So this is just what's dividing them. Otherwise, they're right beside this cairn, the southern kind of cairn. Now, there's another little kind of stone hut site. Again, this wasn't recorded. So it's an unrecorded hut site, and it's situated, it's just located directly. If you notice where my arrow is going along, there's a lovely kind of stone, a slab wall, actually, a slab wall here running kind of in an east-west, and then it turns up in a north direction. And there's another wall coming straight out, another slab wall coming in a north-south direction. And this stone hut is situated right between these two walls. So this was not actually visible. As you can see actually from the aerial map, they're completely inundated with scrub. And this is just another site that the farmer cleared using hand tools. And he did a lovely job of exposing this, because I suppose he could tell there was something there, but he did a very nice job clearing it. So this is just a circular kind of structure. And it was made of loose stones. And again, we don't know the date of these. So they could date from any period, possibly from the medieval to the early modern times. And these structures were easy to construct from loose stones and likely to have been a temporary shelter and possibly used during seasonal times. So it's hard to say exactly how old they are, but most likely a herdsman. It's very small now, so it only really fit like one person inside in it. So maybe a herdsman might have stayed here, or a shepherd, when they were looking after their cattle, may have stayed in this kind of as a temporary accommodation. And the top of this, as you can see just from the top right hand photo, the lovely wall is starting to curve in. So it would have had a corbelled roof. So it would have been a dry stone construction that would have been quite easy to make. Well, I say easy now to make, but would have been quite quick to make, and again would have served as a temporary place to stay, maybe overnight. Now, I'm just going to bring you just to the north, just up to the northwest from our cairns. And what we have here are kind of enclosures. Now, there are actually numerous enclosures throughout this farm. So I'm just going to show you just these three, because these three are kind of very close to each other. And the farmer has actually done some clearing of these enclosures. So the one here, just going to show you very briefly, is completely inundated with scrub. So when I went out to see this during the time of the survey, I couldn't tell if there was anything here or not. I couldn't even see a stone wall. I couldn't see anything. And but I did note it to the farmer that it might be an area worth clearing under the Burren Programme scheme. And he's actually also cleared these two other enclosures on his farm. So I'm just going to show you a brief video of these two. So I'm just going to pause the video very quickly, because here is the first one of the enclosures here, and here's another one. And these two enclosures are situated, they're just sitting right in the middle of two fields. So just for anybody who's unsure, enclosures, now they could have various functions. They could be from homesteads to possibly animal pens or cultivation gardens, and sometimes even ritual sites. Now, very few have ever been excavated in the Burren, so we're not really too sure how old, what period they can date to, but the Burren is covered in enclosures, and these possible house sites is sometimes what we call the smaller ones. So the one you can see here has only a diameter of about 6 to 7 meters. So again, that could have functioned very well as a house site. And the other enclosure that we're going to, it's just right here, you can see it's actually quite covered. This is a hard time of the year if you go out during during the middle of summer, the grass is growing. This one is actually much larger. And this actually also has a small little hut site on one side of inside the enclosure. And I'm going to show you those now in a photograph. So, so without any archaeological excavation, it's usually difficult to date these sites. So to date, there is no definitive Neolithic enclosures that have been identified in the Burren. Now, there are several Bronze Age enclosures that have been identified and been dated with some distinctive features in their foundations, which has allowed us to date other enclosures, or at least be recognized as Bronze Age. Many enclosures are associated also with early medieval cashels and cairns, and were used for human settlement or animal enclosures, or possibly even both. It is most probable that many of the Bronze Age and Iron Age enclosures continued as well to be used in the later periods. So again, these may have been used in the Bronze Age and then just continued in use into the medieval and even into more modern times. Now, we do even know during the post-medieval and early modern times, enclosures did continue to be used, and maybe which is verified by a number of recorded sheepfolds that we can see on the 19th century OS maps. So, sorry now. So this is one of these large enclosures. Unfortunately, we didn't get this in on the drone footage, but I'm just going to show you my two photos. So again, you can see from the aerial map completely inundated with scrub. And as I went out, I couldn't see anything. And this is what I photographed. It was literally just a mound of scrub. And you couldn't even get in through this. It was very thick. I did attempt to get in on a couple of sides to see if I could find a wall, and again, couldn't confirm it. And then this is what it looked like actually just last summer. And when I went out recently, the farmer had cleared it from the scrub, and you can see a lovely large stone enclosure, stone walled enclosure. And actually this one on the inside does have a little hut site, possibly the remains of a possible little structure on the inside. So you can see the difference between these two photographs. I mean, he's just brought this enclosure back to life now, and now we can go out and record it and see it. And he did say this actually took a couple of men to clear, or a couple of people, sorry, to clear, and it took them a good few hours, like a good day's work, and it was quite laborsome, but it was well worth it to find that there was an enclosure in this area. So this is just what the smaller kind of house site, or possibly small enclosure in this area. So again, just you can see the walls, just slab upright walls, and it was circular in shape, and it's only about, I think, 7 meters in diameter. And then this is what the other enclosure just to the north of that house site looks like. So again, it's kind of this one was quite difficult to photograph because you can see the lovely green grass is growing in the area, and it's quite a large one, and again consists of these kind of large slabs, upright slabs that form the wall of this. And this is actually what the little hut site, which is actually just on the kind of southern, then kind of the southeast corner of it. So a little rectangular structure, which might have functioned as a house or maybe a pen for animals inside the enclosure. Now, I'm just going to play a few words from the farmer himself, and just him giving his experience of working within the Burren Programme. And
my father and I, we got into the Burren Life Programme, as it was then, about 10 years ago. And since then, on this farm, and we also have an outside farm up near Boston, which was very overgrown as well. We've got to do a lot of scrub clearance. All the land we own is either monument land or else SAC ground, and which we couldn't have touched unless we got into the Burren scheme. And to be honest, if we hadn't got into the Burren scheme, I probably wouldn't be full-time farming here today, because it wouldn't have been feasible, because the ground would have been all covered in bushes. And what we've got to do has been, it has been immense, like what we've got to do here. So this whole area here was all covered in dense bushes, hazel and blackthorn, and we got to clear it through the Burren Life Programme. And we left the outside of this enclosure because we found it wasn't even marked on the maps or anything. And so we left the bushes that was around it, and then Michael and Claudia Lynch came back, and they brought the Burrenbeo Volunteers, about 30 volunteers was there in the day with hand tools, and we cut it out then, and they were very happy with the outcome. And so since we got into the Burren programme, a lot of the walls were in disrepair and things around the farm, and since then the Burren programme funded us to repair the walls, and then the different fields and things like that, so you'll be able to prioritise grazing. Like this field we're in now, cattle were in there for a light summer graze during the summer, which was recommended, and then now it'll be closed probably until the end of October when the cattle will come in for the winter. This enclosure here, which also has a hut off it, we got to clear here by hand, myself and 2 other people, through the Burren programme. It was funded, and you'll be just very happy to places like that to expose them.
Yeah.
My fault.
So just to show you where we are on the farm, he had cleared a big area. You can see from the aerial, the map, he actually got to clear this big area of scrub, and that's when he found, as he was clearing this area from the scrub, that's when he found that enclosure. So he actually stopped. He didn't clear the enclosure himself. He actually stopped and rang Michael, and Michael came out to see it. So again, like, that enclosure never would have been found because there was no way to penetrate through that scrub. So it just shows the benefit of clearing these scrubbed areas and what you can find. So again, like you can see, like, this was kind of nearly, it was totally inundated with scrub. And this is what John had left when he found it. And the Burrenbeo Trust Volunteers actually came out for a day and cleared this. So you can see that's what they came out to. The top left-hand photo, and the bottom right-hand was the finished works. And you can see that, they've done a lovely job of clearing it. And this is what it looks like today. So the whole area that John has cleared, so again, massive, very dense area of scrub. And what he's cleared, again, you can see the area around the enclosure, again, has now turned into grazing land. So it's a fantastic job done in this area by the farmer and the Burrenbeo Trust Volunteers to come and clear this enclosure for a day. So this is, again, sorry, it's actually quite a small site. So this could actually have been an old house site. It's actually very small. I think it had an internal diameter of about 7 meters. Now, I'm just going to show you just one more video if we have a bit of time. I'll just show you a quick video of another enclosure. So again, I know now I'm bringing you all to enclosures, but there's actually quite numerous enclosures on this farm. So I'm just going to show you another one that, again, I had been out to see. Well, I just thought that there was an enclosure in this area, actually, because of the 25-inch maps. The 1900 maps had indicated a little drawing of a possible enclosure in this area, in one area of the farm, and I'd been out to see it, and I thought there was an enclosure here, and then the farmer actually only recently cleared this a couple of days before I'd been out, or a couple of weeks before I'd been out to see it. So I'm just going to show you this video.
So here's another enclosure that the farmer has cleared through the Burren Programme. And like, he did this now last year, and I had been out to have a look at it before, and it was absolutely inundated with scrub. Like, you couldn't see any of the stones around this enclosure except for maybe one. There was about 1 or 2 stones you could just see popping out, but you couldn't go into it. And he's really cleared it now and done a great job, because now you can actually see the enclosure, and there's some very large upright stones used in the walls of this one. So, and there's a nice possible there's a little hut probably over here on the side of it. Like, none of this was visible. I mean, you couldn't even go into it when I was last here at the site. So he's done a lovely job now. And you can really see the enclosure now on the walls, like these lovely large stones that have been used, for the walls of the enclosure. I mean, none of those were visible. So this is a good example of the benefit of clearing these monuments, these kind of sites, and this is the benefit of the Burren Programme on these farms, to bring these monuments back where you can see them, they're visible and not always inundated and covered with scrub. And so the farmer, he goes to the extra effort of pulling the scrub away from the monument, away from the enclosure, So it's piled up over here outside. It's not, and we make sure, we do say to the farmer not to put them on any walls or anything. So when it breaks down, it's mulching off over in this direction. So it's away from the enclosure itself. So that's a big effort now to pull that stuff all the way out here. So here's another.
Now, so just that enclosure is just at the south end of this farm. And you can see just from my left-hand photo, you can see what I had photographed. So again, just completely inundated with scrub. I suppose I could see the tops of one or two of the stones. So I knew there was possibly an enclosure here. And you can see the right-hand photo. These two photos are actually taken from nearly the same direction. So you can see he left the trees, and there the trees are on the right-hand side. So again, there was a lot of scrub cleared off of this. And again, all using, of course, all using hand tools. So it's really all done by, manual labor and a good few hours of work. I'm just going to show you one last, and then we can go to any questions. I'm just going to show you one last nice little, now this is an unrecorded site that we did find on the farm when I went out one of the days with John, and we discovered this lovely, lovely little hut site. So you can just see it here. It's kind of a circular mound, and he has like a little internal diameter of only about 4 or 5 meters in diameter, and a really, really nice find on this farm. And again, it has been unrecorded. And again, we can't say what date it would be without excavations, but it could most likely be Bronze Age in date. So again, it was lovely to find this. And this is the location of the hut site to that covered enclosure that John had cleared. And the site is just down here at the southern end of the farm. And this is what it looked like when you walked out into it. So, so we were kind of just walking this area of the farm just to see if there was anything down here. And we spotted this in the corner of that field. So a lovely, lovely little find during when we were out surveying the farm. So I'm just going to end it almost here. I just got a few words to say. So this farm is just one of hundreds of farms in the Burren, and that show how important the work on the farm is for the archaeology and the marvelous preservation that can be done. This is also down to the type of farming which has occurred here for hundreds of years, and the respect the farmers have shown for these monuments. Like in recent times, changes to farming practices have led to scrub encroachment on many monuments, but the Burren Programme, and with the help of the FMA programme, they are addressing this. But the main people who are really central to this preservation programme are the farmers themselves. So I'm just going to end there. And if anyone has any questions, you can just pop them into the message thing. Thank you very much now. And thanks for joining us on this session, on this presentation.
Elaine, thank you very much. And Elaine and Michael for your wonderful work in presenting that story. Such amazing work, and how wonderful to see it through the aerial view. It really gives you a good picture of what's been achieved. So just on that, a quick shout out to our photographer and the person who did all the drone footage, Donal Hogan. Thanks, Donal. And for those who weren't able to see the footage very well because of their Wi-Fi, I've posted the link in the chat window. So if you want to revisit some of that footage, beautiful footage, you can have a look at it later on. If you have any questions for Elaine or Michael, maybe put them into the Q&A button, and they will try and answer it now over the next few minutes. Elaine, I might try and ask you the first question from Anonymous. Would it be normal to have such a concentration of cashels? Is there any way to know if they were all one family group or is this more of a village with different families?
Oh, that's a very good question. Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could speculate. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to know unless we were to excavate at least a couple of the cashels to see if they're all from a similar time. But it could be, I mean, it's quite an intense area of cashels. I couldn't even believe myself until I went further out to have a look around the survey as to actually how many were there just outside the reach of this farm. Yeah, it is possibly likely that they were part of the same clan and definitely part of the same group, I would say. So most likely, I hope have I answered that question. But Michael, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. It's, as you say, without excavation, we can't tell for certain whether they're contemporary or not. But I would think certainly many of them are, and it just shows you the intensity of the farming in that location. And the structure of the Tua would have been within a kingdom. There would have been the king, the local king, would have had the major cashel in the area. And then all the other lords below him would have had cashels of various sizes. And below them, then you had strong farmers and other grade farmers as well that had cashels. And the Brehon laws determined what size each of these cashels would be. So you had to have several cashels contemporary in any Tua at a time. So this is probably what you're looking at here. But as you say, without excavation and getting accurate dates, we cannot tell how contemporary they are and over what length of time they were used.
Thank you very much.
Did you hear all that? Am I on air? I am.
No, you are, Michael. Just
my
Michael,
video.
Thank you very much. We heard that very well. I think John wants to ask the next question.
Yes, another anonymous attendee asks, are there any theories on why the historic walls divided the land into such small fields?
Right. Well, there's been very little research done on the fields themselves. Well, I shouldn't say that. No, there's been a certain amount done, certainly from Galway University have done it. And I don't have the results of those, all those programs where students have done masters and that on certain areas of the Burren. But Carlton Jones did his research in Rowan Hill, and it would seem that when the farmers moved into the Burren, obviously there was a lot of scrub and that to be cleared. So you can see in the Neolithic period, we don't have too many walls, but we do have walls. As far as I can remember, the research showed that they were more linear. But in the Bronze Age, it looked like the people, they started off in a settlement and then they expanded out, and you get these curved walls expanding out from a central area. So obviously, as they expanded out, they created more fields, and you get that sort of pattern. When you move into the medieval period associated with the cashels, now at that stage, the land has been well farmed for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the divisions seem to be more straight walls and using those slab walls that Elaine mentioned. So the field system would follow a more linear outline. Now, this is a very broad assessment of it in that period, but this really what needs to be done in the Burren. It's got the facility here for researching that and answering questions like you've just asked, and be more definite about it. So that it's rife for that sort of research. And the Burren Programme, by clearing the scrub, because a lot of these walls now have been inundated, areas where these walls were, as you saw on John's farm, were completely covered and out of view. You couldn't research. So, but the clearing now of these walls has opened up that possibility again in many farms. And it's the unique thing in the Burren that you've got field walls associated with monuments from a whole different series of periods, whereas in the rest of the country, we have got marvelous archaeological monuments, but they're all sitting in modern farms, field systems. So we can't relate what was going on with the monument, but in the Burren, you can still do that. And I know there is certain research going on in it, but more needs to be done. And so it's not answering your question, but it's showing that the possibility is there to answer that question.
That's great.
So
Thank you so much, Michael. That's wonderful. Sorry, John, were you going to say something?
No, I think you take the next question.
Karen Van Dorp has said, this is brilliant, Elaine. Thank you so much. I was wondering how you can tell the difference between a large enclosure and a small cashel. Do they have distinctive features to tell them apart? Thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah, so the cashels normally have larger, wider, substantial walls. So again, like a cashel wall could be about 1.5 meters in width up to about 3 meters. So like, I'll be honest, like when I first started going out, you wouldn't know what's what. So just say it takes a bit of practice to get used to them. But again, just on like John's farm, his enclosures that he has are kind of they're literally stone slabs, nearly just slabs in a single kind of line of stones that would have been built up, put extra stones on top. And these are quite just narrow walls. So I've recorded the width of all the walls on the enclosure. So they were only about 80 centimeters wide. So cashel walls are much, much wider. Again, they'd be over 1.5 meters wide, if not up to 3 meters wide. So that's kind of one of the main distinctive features of cashels. Now, there are a lot of cashels that have been recorded in the Burren, and there is actually cashels that have not been recorded in the Burren. So we have found through some of the work through the Burren Programme, we have found unrecorded cashels. And I did recently, just as an example, go out to see an enclosure on a farm. It was recorded as an enclosure. And I went out and I saw, it was a very big enclosure. And I actually walked along the side of the wall just to have a look. And I noticed that it's actually the wall of the enclosure. So just again, kind of single line of walls, stones, was actually built on a much wider wall underneath. And it looks like that now, again, it most likely was built on top of, it probably was a cashel. But again, the walls are gone, not very much above ground, but literally at the base of the wall, there was a much wider wall. So that looks like that you had a marked enclosure, it's been recorded as enclosure, but actually built on top of a cashel wall. So again, sometimes you just have to, when you go out, and even though to look for an enclosure, sometimes you have to just have a look and check and just see, are there earlier walls underneath? So we would do that as part of the survey. We would look for see if there's any enclosure walls built on top of old mound walls as well. So we do find a good bit of that. And again, that enclosure turns out it is built on a cashel. So it was a lovely kind of to see that and to find something like that, where you're kind of like, oh, it works, identifying these features, anyway.
Fantastic, a mixture of both things.
Yeah.
Okay, a further question, anonymous attendee. Will adequate grazing mean that the scrub won't encroach again?
Yeah, well, it will definitely help, and it's definitely helped a lot on John's farm. And the cattle can actually kind of access a lot of those enclosures and go now into them, and again that will help. Now probably if there's hazel starts to kind of come back, the farmer he's going to keep an eye on the enclosures, and he can just cut off any of the tops of them. But I definitely think the grazing regime that they have within the Burren Programme, and that a farmer like John is doing, will definitely help to keep the scrub back. I mean, really, it's the cattle keeping down any of that kind of growth that happens, and by kind of cutting back these areas of scrub, we're kind of accessing other parts of the farm. So I definitely think it helps. Do you have anything to say to that, Michael?
Yeah, well, it's impossible to say what will happen down the road, but certainly it will help. Now, in the past, there were a lot more sheep and a lot more goats and that, and also people cut the scrub for firewood. So that's not happening now. So, so it'll be up to the farmers themselves, like John, to keep an eye on what's happening on the monuments, and to control the scrub as well as having them graze. But grazing is very important aspect of it.
Thank you very much. I just noticed we're running out of time, but I'm going to end the talk with the last question. A lot of compliments there for both of you, and the webinar is being attended by over 90 people. So thank you again for all those who've attended today. Superb presentation, well done all. Every farm in the Burren is a learning landscape. Perhaps a word on the permissions required to do this work and how Michael helps the farmers in this regard.
Well, the permissions, that's what has happened in the past is that farmers would have had to, if they had to do work on a monument, they'd have had to apply to the National Monument Service for permission to do any work on or near the monument, and that usually would take time. And obviously, the National Monument Service would be worried about whether the work would be done under supervision, or how that. It would depend on the knowledge of the farmer, and that the work would be done properly. So under this scheme, because it's monitored and because what happens is that the farm plan is put in, and if there's monuments on it where the scrub is to be cleared, we go out and have a look at it. And when there's work to be done on the monument, we run through that with the farmer, how it will be done. And then the Burren Programme applies for the permission on behalf of the farmer to get the work done. So all the work has permission. It's all done with permission from the National Monument Service. And that's only right and proper. And it works very well. And it's been working for the last good number of years now quite successfully. And you can see the results on John's farm. Even the field systems have to, when they're being cleared, we have to get permission if there's a machine involved or that, and how the machine will go through the field system and where it will cross the walls and how it will cross the walls. So it's all very time consuming, but it's all done absolutely with permission. And it has to have the permission, and we abide by that. And the farmers abide by that as well. So it's really, and there's great credit due to the farmers, the way they have conformed to the when we set out the plan and make an agreement about what way to do it, and then it is done that way, and the results speak for themselves.
It's a fantastic answer. It just really shows such a collaborative piece of work, between everyone involved, the archaeologists like yourselves and the farmers and volunteers and the community supporting this. So it's fantastic to see the story unfold before our eyes. And thank you so much for sharing what you have learned on this farm in the Burren. So with that, I'm going to